If you play in or follow a brass band anywhere in the world, you will probably recognise that jazzy march. It's called Praise, and it's the remarkably adventurous work of a teenager in the late 1930s, a precociously gifted young musician from the Salvation Army in Sheffield by the name of Wilfred Heaton. Well, Heaton went on to become one of the most admired composers for brass band music in the 20th century, for the quality rather than the quantity of his work. For its spirit of adventure and its range, from light and bright marches like that to the emotional depths of some of his more reflective pieces, all, as I say, composed for the Salvation Army. But what about this from the early 1950s? It doesn't sound like the same composer, does it? But it is. It's the powerfully dissonant opening of a 25-minute piano sonata that Wilfred Heaton all but finished, but kept under wraps in what he used to call his unregarded corner. That was a collection of unperformed and rejected works that became quite large over the years. Well, for me, this sonata is one of the major discoveries in the piano repertoire from the mid-20th century here in the United Kingdom. A powerful work with a huge demonic scherzo and a 10-minute emotionally draining slow movement. Yes, you can hear the influences of his favourite composers like Walton, Bartók, even Bach and Beethoven in the way it's structured. But it's also so direct and personal in its display of virtuosity and its raw emotion. I first came across the sonata along with 3 pieces for piano and a little suite for flute over 20 years ago now, when Heaton's family invited me to undertake the editing of his unpublished music. Quite a treasure trove, as we discovered. Finding a pianist who had the time and technique to take this monumental piece on proved elusive over the years. But in 2022, having edited all the brass band music, I was determined to give it a fighting chance to be heard and appreciated. And listening to it at the world premiere some 70 years after Heaton had composed it was a complete revelation, played with total commitment and passion by the amazing Murray McLaughlin as part of his Chetham's International Piano Summer School. Well, we made a recording at the same time in Stoller Hall, along with the other piano and instrumental pieces from the 1950s. But the sonata forms the centrepiece of my latest production, Discovering Wilfred Heaton. Earlier this year, we completed the album with a selection of charming songs that Heaton wrote as a 16-year-old, really polished jewels. And they were sung beautifully by James Gilchrist, with Rose McLaughlin at the piano, Murray's daughter.
One morning, oh so early, my beloved, all the birds were singing blithely as if never they would cease. 'Twas a thrush song in my garden, hear the story, hear the story. And the lark sang, give us glory, and the dove said, give us peace. Then I hearkened, oh so early, my beloved, to that us fain to sweeten duty, when the wren sang, give us beauty. She made answer, she made answer, she made answer. Give us
Before World War II, Heaton's ambition was to be a composer first and foremost. However, that ambition was only ever partially realised, and by his mid-30s he'd given up any ambitions of a professional composing career. There are three major factors, really. He felt temperamentally unsuited to the cut and thrust of the professional world that he tasted briefly in London. Where in his youth he could write quickly and fluently through the inspiration of the moment, writing with a more complex voice that he was aiming for in the 1950s was more time-consuming, and it took him away from his other lifelong passions, that of his Christian faith and wider spiritual matters. Now, crucially also, he felt trapped between two musical worlds. He was too advanced for the Salvation Army, yet, in his own estimation, he felt too mainstream for the wider world, where the onward march of atonal modernism seemed to be sweeping all before it. So there are just a handful of works without brass, but they reveal so much promise, sadly not fully realised until his final years, when he began to compose again, albeit fitfully. As you'll hear in Discovering Wilfred Heaton, Murray McLachlan and his fellow musicians did a fabulous job in bringing this little-known music to life. Well, I'm really grateful to them for their total commitment, and also to Divine Art for taking the project on. Hope you enjoy it.